Greetings, lovely listener. Welcome to Biting All the Apples special edition episode, The Great Cosmic Mother in War. We're using this May Monday release to bring you some hidden knowledge about Memorial Day, Mother's Day, and the military-industrial complex. We're putting it in context of our book of the moment, The Great Cosmic Mother. And you are going to want to hear what the authors Monica Zhu and Barbara Moore had to say about the patriarchal war machine. It's spooky relevant to today. So lock in. We're getting into it. And we're back. Well, I, Sarah Kay, am back. You'll hear from Joanna a little later, but for now, I'm your special episode guide. Yes, your guide through history and how we're all still bouncing the checks that it wrote us. Let me start by taking you back to my favorite era, 19th century America. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or of tears. Say firmly, we will not have our great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we've been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession. Ooh, powerful. Is that a Memorial Day message or what? Well, not quite. That's part of Julia Ward Howe's 1870 Mother's Day Proclamation. I'll put a link to the whole proclamation in the show description, by the way. Howe was an abolitionist, co-founder of the American Women's Suffrage Association, and the poet who wrote Battle Hymn of the Republic. Yeah, so she's just another one of those prolific 19th century activist artist types, And by the way, if you like those, definitely dig into our first season. It's so 19th century. But back to Howe. After the Civil War, she called for the appointment of a General Congress of Women without limit of nationality to promote peaceful international cooperation. That effort stalled. And I'm sure we could do a longer episode on the full deets of why that was stalled. But the gist of it all was that she then pushed for annual Mother's Day for peace each June. So from 1873 to 1913, Mother's Day services were held on June 2nd in cities like New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, Boston, London, Rome, and Geneva. Rome and Geneva. And while Howe was thinking globally in making national proclamations, another woman, Reeves Jarvis, a social activist and community organizer who had lost 9 of her 13 children to illness, organized Mother's Day work clubs, beginning in 1858 to fight epidemics such as measles, typhoid, and diphtheria that devastated Appalachian towns. She was from West Virginia, I believe. And the clubs would do family education and sanitation and food safety of the time and provided medicine and quarantine homes. But the Civil War changed Jarvis, though. Probably using her experience of loss as a mother, she insisted that her women's groups help both Confederate and Union soldiers while also promoting peace. And then, so get this, in 1868, she organized a Mother's Friendship Day for soldiers from both sides and their families at the Taylor County Courthouse in Pruntytown, West Virginia. I think I have that right. Anybody from Pruntytown, let me know. So it was in Pruntytown, West Virginia, to help the healing process and restore the sense of community. But many veterans arrived, but allegedly while armed. And so the town officials, they were you have got to cancel this stuff. This is going to not go well for anybody, for either side. But she refused. She believed in her mission. And according to multiple accounts, Jarvis stood before the men, flanked by teenage girls dressed in blue and gray, and keenly explained the gathering's message of forgiveness and unity. Can you imagine doing that? So eventually, more women dressed alternately in blue and gray and came forward to link hands with Jarvis. And they led the crowd in choruses of Dixie and the Star-Spangled Banner. And you can look this up because there are witnesses that recall people, including veterans, weeping and shaking hands and saying, "God bless you, neighbor, and let's be friends again." Unheard of. I hadn't heard of this stuff. I mean, I can't stand it. You know people want to come together. And these moments need to be facilitated, and not just by women. But don't let me get off track, because we were talking about war, and we'll get there. So after Jarvis passed away in 1905, her daughter, Anna Jarvis, vowed to fulfill her mother's dream of a day honoring mothers. And President Woodrow Wilson issued a proclamation. Proclamations are like, so, I mean, we even have them today. You can even write one. Anyways, he issued a proclamation in 1914 establishing a National Mother's Day on the second Sunday of May. And at that time, Mother's Day was still connected to the early peace movement. But World War I was beginning to change things. In 1915, the Women's Peace Party, founded that same year, had a convention. Their leader, Jane Addams, called attention to women and mothers' roles in ending World War I. She said this: "Every woman who cares for a little child fondly throws her imagination forward to the time when he shall have become a great and heroic man. But no one in Europe in the face of war's destruction can consider any other fulfillment of life than a soldier's death." So she's really calling out to mothers. And unfortunately, what happened in the U.S. was the U.S. needed to go to war. So in 1917, Mother's Day was co-opted with a patriotic message of how brave American sons were fighting to protect American families and the wholesome way of life that mothers represent. And you know what we say here at Biting All the Apples, it's like, what is more wholesome than blowing fellow humans to smithereens? So by the time the country was involved in World War II, Mother's Day had been fully co-opted and reserved to especially praise patriotic mothers. And that, dear listeners, is why gals who bite apples, or figs, if we want to be mythologically and or historically accurate, from the Tree of Knowledge, can't help but connect Mother's Day in May to Memorial Day, kind of where we are right now. And why we can't help but see war and all the horrible effects of war as a woman's issue. It is women and children that suffer the effects of war through violence, loss, and destruction of lands, homes, families, and the future. Here we had women standing up for cooperation and peace back in the 19th century because they were the ones dealing with the emotional and physical aftermath. They were the caretakers. And what did the government eventually do with that energy? They said, if you really want to help, be a patriot and send us more sons. Now we know Monica Jute and Barbara Moore talk about patriotism in The Great Cosmic Mother. They view patriotism as a redirection of our natural, creative, and revolutionary spirit. But with patriotism, all that energy is channeled to serve the machine. So here we are on Memorial Day, a day that honors those in the armed forces who gave their lives. And we're recognizing that and also bringing to light the other lives affected by the patriarchal god of war. On a personal note, I come from a long line of people that served in the armed forces, as far back as the Union in the Civil War, and as recent as my precious younger siblings serving in Afghanistan. And I was raised by a Vietnam veteran who had my brother and I just a few years after coming back. And if ever get the time, I'll spearhead a study about Gen Xers raised by Vietnam vets. So if you are one, reach out. But I say all of that to let you all know you aren't listening to someone that is clueless about the subject matter. Someone that knows talking about patriotism and Memorial Day is, loaded with a bunch of stuff. But, looking at where the American Armed Forces are right now in 2026, I say it should be loaded. Because when patriotism is served up much like religion, as in, if you question it, you will be shunned, scorned, and now, according to this administration, possibly tried for treason, it is impossible not to view it as yet another means of control. I mean, think about it. How else would they keep talking us into horrible, violent, costly situations that don't benefit us? Patriotism. And speaking of horrible, violent, costly situations that don't benefit us, here's a little something Howe and Moore had to say about war. In order to maintain human beings in a perpetual condition of exploitable means rather than sacred ends in ourselves, this is why the patriarchal God begins and ends as a war god. To maintain himself in power, he must wage war against human life. His priesthoods, sacred texts, doctrines, and dogmas exist to rationalize this horrific state of incessant warfare as man's spiritual destiny. His social and economic institutions exist to provide continuous cannon fodder and spoils for continuous war. A global god of war served by the global religion of money defines the human condition today. Our various nationalities, our sectarian beliefs, our local customs, our personal opinions may serve us as individual definitions, but they no longer define the condition of the world, in which global missile systems and global factory economic systems have rendered national, sectarian, local, and personal definitions merely soporific and, in fact, obsolete. All humanity today lives under one global God, the God of war, who is continuously empowered and enlarged by the religion of money. Ah, yes, money. Who makes the most money from war? Historically, it hasn't been women. I think Howe and Moore have a little something to say about that, too. In warfare, men refound the group and spiritual identity they had lost with the loss of the Stone Age hunting life. A new god, the male war god, could be erected to pneumanize it, to make it seem holy. But no one could deny warfare had its very secular, practical side. It was the primary builder of male wealth, and thence of a ruling elite. Yeah, go figure. And if you recall, in the first months of the twice-impeached insurrectionist pedophiliac president's term, waste, fraud, and abuse was the focus of Doge and meritocracy. And yeah, Keg's breath he was big on meritocracy. So he shit-canned most of the Defense Department and replaced them with people of merit. And that's merit as long as you describe merit as meaning you're filthy rich and want to make more money. It's just wild how, the super warmongers are also super greedy. So Keg's breath, he got rid of some career, civil military service people and replaced them with, let's just take a look. Here's an incomplete list of government officials appointed by this administration. Stephen Feinberg, Deputy Secretary of Defense. He's a billionaire, and he's overseeing the Golden Dome project. Mark Berkowitz, he's the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Program. For the Space Program. But that guy owns $5 million in Lockheed Martin stock. Benjamin Coleman, he's the assistant. I have ASST. Is that assistant, associate? I don't know whatever, Secretary of the Navy. And he's connected to a comms company Lockheed Martin is invested in. Kirsten E. Davies, Department of War Chief Information Officer, happens to be a board member of an Israeli cybersecurity firm. And she also advised Talon Cybersecurity. Mark Anderson, Assistant Secretary of the Army, worked for Ernst & Young, and they've won $2.8 billion in defense contracts. Anthony Tata, that's somebody's real name, Tony Tatas. How have I not heard this before? He's the Undersecretary of War for Personnel and Readiness, and he's previously worked with a number of defense contractors. And then last we have Elbridge Colby, Undersecretary of Defense Policy. His grandfather, he was the director of the CIA. So, how meritorious is that? He's somebody's son's son. You know what I mean? and he worked as a consultant for the Thalamus Group, and they've been awarded $20 million in defense contracts. And he also has advised in wargaming and defense forecasts. That's just a little bit of tasters of who's running this show. And I'm bringing these real-life fuckers up to show you all that the messages in the Great Cosmic Mother are not just woo-woo, hippy-dippy hallucinations. They knew what they were talking about. They were seeing it in the 80s. The fact that the money holders are the ones that stand to make millions, maybe even billions, are now the ones calling the shots while the working people go to war, while mothers send their sons and daughters to war. Well, it is the logical progression of unchecked patriarchal greed. Let's hear from June Moore real quick. The god of patriarchy from the beginning has been a god of war and economic exploitation. It is no surprise that the world of today is a world of war and money. What else rules us anywhere we go on Earth? To define human beings as functions or exploitable means rather than as sacred ends in ourselves is to create, by definition, a perpetual state of war. So, like in the last episode, we told you that you were oppressed, and now we're letting you know that you all live in a perpetual state of war. I'm sure you're finding this all very fun and uplifting. I'm kidding. The truth is knowledge is uplifting, so just stay with me. And speaking of greed and money, since you really can't extract that from talking about military and war, and about the ladies writing in the 80s about the 80s, here's a little war tangent Joanna and I went on that seems to be custom made for this special episode. Let's take a listen.
Because I think we didn't really talk about the global god of war, which for me, that portion where they were talking about a god, because we talked about the jealous god, but when they started referring to the god of war and our current reality, I was just like, oh my God.
Which chapter is that from?
I think it's the one right before.
I'm just trying to remember. What is it? Because then it's like, okay.
It is. I tell you, because
No, I'm going to tell you.
No, I'm going to tell you. Who's going to get there first?
That's right.
Because I don't have a sticky note there.
Okay. It's called Beyond the Male God and His Machine.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Well, I was talking in the beginning when we were chatting that the government has become like this weird religious entity, which is not what it was supposed to be.
Right.
In the 80s, in the Pentagon, is when group Bible reading sessions and prayer breakfasts were on the increase, okay? And that's when the ladies start talking about this god of war.
Okay.
A global god of war served by the global religion of money that defines the human condition today. And I mean, like, you read that and you're like, well, that is actually what's happening because the whole world has been at war. And as Americans, we're very isolated from it, like, because we don't see war like people that live in the Ukraine or Somalia or a million other places right now see it. So it's easy to go, oh, well, that's over there. But really, this global holy war is all from patriarchy.
Yeah.
That's the gist of it, is that they have created God to be a warrior that wants to fight for the next life instead of the earth that we live on, and has made everything except for humans be dead, like the water's dead, all this, and we can buy stuff, which we've been doing since the beginning. But when you read the ladies and how they write, and they're like, it's 1980, we got to do stuff now. And I'm like, oh, how come no one did a podcast and told me in the 80s that we were going to be fighting this global war? And it gives this great history. Now, mind you, they could update it with like a little, I think they should be an appendix and be like, let's see what the statistics are today. Because they talk about Reagan and how in 1979 there were more bombs than food. They were spending $20,000 a year for soldiers versus $380 a year per public school kid.
Oh gosh, those stats now would be like...
Yeah, I want to know. Like, I'm like curious. For every 100,000 people, there were 556 soldiers, but only 85 doctors. And as you know, we were talking earlier, actually, that doctors are just leaving the country because it's so jacked.
Because insurance companies run medicine now, so...
Yeah. And now they're using AI to diagnose you and things and decide if you should be covered for shit. They actually talk about AI and things in here, too. They don't call it AI,
right.
but they call it, it's part of the machine. And so if you can't create life out of your body, men can create things with technology. They talk a lot about poverty, divorce, and violence. And they talk about women being taken advantage of. But the way that they smoothed it over was like, okay, you're not making any money, but what you do is priceless.
Right.
And, we value you. Everything you do is priceless.
What did you?
It's so priceless that we were going to pay you nothing.
Did you read my Substack?
Yes.
Recently?
Yes.
Well, I mentioned that where they make it such a holy thing that it would seem like rude to discuss the cost.
Yeah.
Or pain or compensation or anything like that.
Yeah, it's more holy.
Right.
What you're doing is God's work.
So the other thing they do that with, if you think about it, is with the military.
Oh, yeah.
So if you think about how whack this country is about veterans, the myth, and like you have to worship them and they're like the final word. And I'm not saying one, by the way.
Yeah.
I have
veteran daddy
and
brothers
siblings.
and sister.
Yeah. I
brothers.
Literally have like a brother and sister that served in Afghanistan. So I'm not like, it's total bullshit. But what they're doing is like protecting the agents of their corporate warfare, because the truth is like we haven't won a war since World War II. And every other military engagement is about money and corporate stuff.
And they're not taking care of them. They're not even like the people that are waging these wars. They're like, yeah, honor the soldiers, but we're going to put them in the most dangerous places. That
I know. That's what I'm like. It's just BS.
So it's these rich people that want to just keep us encased in the religion. But it says, as for the ruling elites to whom patriarchy has given manipulative power over both men and women, the war god has always been a profitable machine. Fueled by their money, if not only returns wealth manyfold, it also returns social order. Patriotism being so often a repressed form of revolutionary energy. Social order allows the ruling elite to enjoy the profits of war in relative peace. Quote, this machinery has worked for us for 4,000 years. Why stop now? So say the owners of the machinery as they collect their profits. Which is...
There you go.
Yeah. It's this whole economy based on killing other people. And mostly women and children is what they...
Absolutely.
What it becomes.
If you think about how that led into people accepting school shootings as the cost of having, like, guns.
Because the guns keep you free.
If you think about how just immoral that is, it's crazy. It's also crazy that we don't... I mean, I know there are a lot of anti-war activists and stuff, but even the idea of peace or just considering that you're like murdering people in war, that's not even a mainstream.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time with my words today.
Well, no, it's not even a second, like they don't even mention it. Like if you listen to these people talking about war, they're just like, it's peace through strength. Not like, oh, people are dying and we're killing innocent civilians.
Fucking douchebag is like maximum lethality. I'm like, why are we even why is it acceptable to talk about killing people?
Thank you. Why is it? Can you tell me?
I don't know. I don't know.
It says, as the patriarchal war god became the global god of global war, the state of holy war has become global inevitable, and continuous. All war today is fanatic and also technologically devastating. All war has the potential for rapid acceleration into total war. But to maintain itself in power, the patriarchal system must maintain the world in a continuous, chronic state of war. Holy war is all war. It is a righteous war, self-justifying. Whether the war is conducted between nations as classic warfare or conducted within a nation as a national guard or policing action against the nation's own people hardly makes a difference anymore. And recently, although I know that, because we talked about this before, because we were like, they're going to come and get us, the thought police. Recently, they've been saying that they released who is an enemy of the state, and it's like liberals. People have been posting about it, and I'm like, well, hasn't that been out there? Unless they just posted it on the White House page. But yeah, they're showing up at people's houses if you're speaking bad about them, which is right here in the 80s. We already knew.
Yeah.
If only.
And I wonder if the people that go to the other side, because we are so disconnected and purposeless, if you have this right wing that's like giving you like something to do, it almost makes sense, very simple sense, but you get why they're like, I'll be an ICE agent for, doing something.
I'm doing something for the good of all.
Oh my God, it's so disgusting.
To continue the hate and the disgustingness. Yeah, so I because I do think that is our God. It's the global God of war that has taken hold, and I don't think that we should just resign ourselves to that. I don't think that should be. I think we need to talk about that more.
We need to talk about more.
Yeah, because honestly, remember reading the Bible, the women's Bible, and we were reading these passages, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I missed that. Christians would just go in and kill, and they're like, they weren't just like, we need this land or whatever. They were like, kill every one of them and get rid of all of their stuff. Yeah. Now reading this book, I was like, oh, I know why they wanted to get rid of all the stuff, because it was an earth-centered religion. Yeah. And we can't have the remnants of that and later having people go, oh, wait a minute, this story doesn't match with what history is.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do one more thing. Okay. There is a historic extrapolation from an ontology of a man, the territorial possessor and aggressor, that would lead to one kind of politics. And there is an extrapolation from the ontology of a woman, the creator and sharer of food, that would lead to quite another. All of which is to say that we are what we think, that our vision of the origin of the human culture is simply another description of our perception of the present condition. So what we think defines everything. So if we've always been thinking that our Savior comes after death and we don't have to do anything here, that's why we are here fighting needless wars. Whereas if we could bounce out of that and start thinking about sharing, being that woman, the creator, sharer of food, instead of the man fighter and take her over and get it all for myself, that we could change our whole culture just by a thought. And I think people are thinking that. Mm-hmm. I think people are moving that way, although it could just be you and I.
No, I think a positive side effect of these institutional breakdowns and then also seeing like that corruption, a lot of people are going to be or are questioning like, wait a minute, what is this whole shit I've bought into? Like we always talk about when we're here, we're like, we were told like checks and balances and this and that. So I think that, and once you start to question these monolithic institutions that seem like they were just part of
They were part
the
of
way
our life.
things are.
Yeah, that's how the universe worked.
It only, it follows that other things will start to break down.
So I guess like patriarchy made the universe so small.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's very obvious that it's not small.
Right? You're like, guess what? It is not small. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry for my tangent, but I feel like so much of where we are is in that holy God war crap and all the money we spend on it. And it's not just America. That's where the global comes in. It's all of these countries. And we're just spending money to defend ourselves against each other.
Well, what I tell you, that's the perpetual state of war right there. With all of this warfare and all the elites feasting on the spoils of it all, you'd think that there'd be more than a single day honoring the regular people that sacrificed their lives in war. And if the women of the 19th century had their way, we probably would have more honor and peace. And, I mean, I think that tells us we definitely have a lot to work on. But the last little slice of knowledge that I'm going to serve to you today, is the story of the first Memorial Day. So there are a few historical groups and historians that claim to know the origins of Memorial Day. But in 1996, David Blight, a professor of history and Black studies at Yale University, was researching a book on the Civil War. A curator at Harvard's Houghton Library asked if he wanted to look through 2 boxes of unsorted material from Union veterans. There was a piece of cardboard in that box with a handwritten narrative by an old veteran, plus a date referencing an article in the New York Tribune. That narrative told the essence of the story that Blight ended up telling in his book, Race and Reunion, I think that was released in the early 2000s, about a march on the racetrack in 1865. And the racetrack they're talking about was the Washington Race Course and Jockey Club in Charleston, South Carolina. The Confederate Army had transformed the formerly posh country club into a makeshift prison for Union captives in the late stages of the Civil War. More than 260 Union soldiers died from disease and exposure while being held in the racetrack's open-air infield. Their bodies were hastily buried in a mass grave behind the grandstands. After Charleston fell and Confederate troops evacuated, the Black people freed from enslavement remained. One of the first things the emancipated men and women did was exhume the mass grave and reinter the bodies in a new cemetery with a tall whitewashed fence inscribed with the words, "Martyrs of the Race Course." And then on May 1865, a crowd of people, mostly freed slaves with some white missionaries, staged a parade around the racetrack. 3,000 Black schoolchildren carried bouquets of flowers and sang John Brown's body. Members of the famed 54th Massachusetts and other Black Union regiments were in attendance and performed double-time marches. Black ministers recited verses from the Bible. All in all, reports estimate that 10,000 people attended. Had you heard that? Isn't that incredible? Unsurprisingly, the day was eventually co-opted. I shouldn't say the day. Memorial Day, the holiday, was eventually co-opted by patriotism. For some time, though, the holiday was meant to honor only Civil War casualties. Memorial Day was expanded after World War I to commemorate all Americans who have died in any U.S. military conflict. By 1890, all northern states recognized Decoration Day as an official holiday. That's what they used to call it, Decoration Day. Southern states celebrated on different days until after World War I. It wasn't until 1971, that's just like 50-some years ago, that Congress declared it a national federal holiday, officially moving it to the last Monday in May. I mean, 1971 seems like not that long ago. But our biting all the apples point is, isn't it fascinating how the history of Mother's Day and Memorial Day is rooted in peace, respect, and coming together, and how that message has been eclipsed by patriotism. It tells us everything we need to know that modern American patriotism cannot sit alongside peace, respect, and coming together. But nothing is set in stone, and the more we know, the better we can do. So with that, I'll wrap up this super special bonus fun special super episode. I so appreciate you listening. As always, we love to know what you think. We want to know what you think. Are you thinking? Does this podcast make you think? Leave us a comment and get a special reward. I'm serious. Try us. Other ways to reach out are in the show notes, along with links, sources, and extra information about everything we discussed on today's episode. Have a spectacular week, and may peace be with you. Farewell, my peaceful friends.